Hey, I get it when you're trying to level up your live streams or small studio productions. The biggest fear is spending a decent chunk of cash on gear that ends up gathering dust because it's either too complicated or just doesn't fit the way you work. I was in that exact spot last month, juggling a couple of webcams and a laptop mixer, and the whole setup felt like a patchwork quilt that kept pulling at the seams. That's why I wanted to sit down and walk through the Roland PTZ single camera bundle with the V02 HDMKI streaming video mixer, so you can decide if it's the right fit before you hit the buy button. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the core idea behind a PTZ pan-tilt-zoom camera. The promise is simple: one camera that you can move around remotely, zoom in on a subject, and get a consistent, studio-grade image without having to physically reposition anything. The Roland bundle tries to deliver that promise in a package that's marketed as compact, affordable, and plug-and-play. For someone who isn't a full-time production house but wants a step up from a static webcam, that's an appealing proposition. Who should consider this bundle? If you're a hobbyist streamer, a teacher doing virtual classes, a small business owner looking to showcase products, or even a church tech volunteer trying to add a professional look to worship services, the all-in-one nature of the bundle can save you a lot of headache. The V02 HDMKI mixer has large, tactile controls that feel like they were designed for people who prefer turning a knob over digging through endless software menus. That makes it a solid entry point for beginners who might get overwhelmed by a laptop-based workflow. The PTZ camera itself, the AViPAS AV2020 with a 20 optical zoom, gives you enough reach to frame a speaker at the front of a room or zoom in on a product on a table without losing detail. On the flip side, if you're a seasoned creator who already has a rack of lenses, a dedicated audio interface, and a software-centric workflow, you might find the bundle a bit restrictive. The PTZ camera is fixed in its lens ecosystem. There's no interchangeable lens mount to swap in a macro or a fast prime for low-light situations. So if you regularly shoot in dimly lit environments or need the creative flexibility of changing focal lengths on the fly, you'll probably outgrow the AV2020 pretty quickly. Now, let's dig into the practical strengths. The first thing I noticed when I powered the system on was how quickly the V02 HDMKI presented a live preview. The large LCD screen shows a clean, full-frame view of what the PTZ camera sees, and the physical control wheel for pan and tilt feels responsive. You can set a preset position, hit a button, and the camera swings to that exact angle in a second or two. That's a huge time saver for live events where you need to switch between a speaker at a podium and a product table without fumbling with software sliders. Autofocus on PTZ units is often a point of contention, but the AV2020 seems to handle it with enough confidence for most talking head scenarios. When I moved a presenter a few feet left and right, the camera kept the face sharp without hunting, which is critical when you're streaming to an audience that expects a polished look. In brighter rooms, the focus lock holds steady even when the presenter gestures dramatically. The camera's low-light behavior is modest. It doesn't produce a cinematic shallow depth of field in a dim studio, but it does a respectable job in typical office lighting. If you're planning to shoot in a conference hall that's only lit by overhead fluorescence, you'll get a usable image, though you might want to add a few LED panels for a cleaner look. Stabilization is another practical angle. Because the PTZ camera is mounted on a fixed tripod head, you won't see the jitter you sometimes get with handheld cams. The only motion you'll notice is the deliberate pan and tilt you program. That makes it ideal for static shots where you want a smooth, professional glide from one angle to the next. The bundle's compact footprint means you can tuck it into a corner of a small studio or even mount it on a ceiling grid without drawing attention, which is useful if you want a discrete camera that doesn't dominate the visual space. One area where the bundle could improve is menu friction. The V02 HDMKI has a decent on-screen menu, but digging into deeper settings like adjusting the camera's white balance curve or tweaking the zoom speed requires a few more button presses than you might like. It's not a deal-breaker, but if you love fine-tuning every parameter, you'll spend some time learning where each option lives. Battery confidence isn't a primary concern here because the camera runs off AC power, but the mixer does have an internal battery that can keep it alive for a short period during a power interruption, which adds a small safety net for live streams.